I'm Himshri. You can call me Hima. Uh, yeah, a little bit about how I got into meditation. I'll start with that and why this topic of meditation, or rather the practice of meditation, is very close to my heart and how it has helped me. And from there, we can go to just explore a little bit about how our thoughts function. Like Vanilla Ma'am said, I have a background in psychology and neuroscience, so I'm very interested in how the brain functions, and that's what I've been exploring professionally also. So just combining a little bit of neuroscience and a little bit of spirituality and spiritual concepts, we'll discuss a little on how our thoughts impact our mental health, our spiritual health, and also our physical health. So my journey so far, I think like ma'am said, I've been meditating for 10 years. I wouldn't say every single day for the last 10 years, but more or less I've started meditating 10 years ago seriously because of my parents. They introduced me to this meditation, Anapanasati, that we've all been practicing. Um, Initially, when I used to meditate, it was purely because I was a kid. I think I was 10 years old or like younger than that. I don't remember when I started officially, but 10 years ago was when I told myself, okay, I'm going to consider this a daily practice or a regular practice at least, and do it for myself, not because my mom's forcing me to. Initially, I would only use it as a powerful tool to get me where I wanted to be. So I realized very early on with my practice that this is an amazing tool that I have in my toolbox, be it to improve my focus, be it to be more calm, or be it to be a little more confident in myself. Meditating really helps in bridging all of these things that I wanted. So initially, I would meditate before going on stage in school and presenting something in front of the class. All of these times, I would meditate for a little while. I would meditate for 5, 10 minutes before I sit down to study. So I was purely using it for the benefits that this practice got me. And later on, I came across multiple masters who told me all the miracles that people are experiencing in their life because they've been meditating more regularly with more intensity and a little more faith and belief than I had at that point. And that got me very curious. I heard this one master come home and he was sharing his experiences with meditation and honestly didn't believe him because all of those things I thought were not possible were the things that he was explaining. So he was talking about how he could see into the future and he could experience like energy flow within his body as he sits down to meditate, and he can actually track how his body is reacting to different things while he's meditating. And all of that I thought was pretty not possible, and maybe he was just lying about it, or you know I thought it was all woo woo and I should not be believing that because I come from science. So I just left it. And later on, came across so many different masters and so many people my age who were achieving all of their dreams and doing all of these things that I thought was impossible. For example, I came across one person who was pretty similar to my age, and she was studying for her exams, and it was a particularly difficult subject for her. And she was talking about how, with meditation, she could just calm down and relax, and she could even visualize what was going to happen in the future. And that was actually how it has happened. So she manifested her grade, her score, and how exactly she's going to write the paper, everything down to the T. And in her visualization, she has done it, and it has actually happened in real life. And since then, I've been very curious, and uh, I started exploring. Okay, is this actually possible? Like, is there some science behind this, or is this just people lying to me? Because out of 100 people, there's only two of them who claim this is happening. But what if they're not lying? And that's something that the rest of the 98 people are just not capable of understanding or doing because we don't have that practice. So I started researching and just in my own time, just looking at things a little more scientific because that's what I believe in. If uh, if it's not possible to be proven by science, I would not believe it. At least that was my attitude back in the day when I was studying and growing up. But now I'm a little more open to things because once I started reading more research papers that are not popular, but nevertheless still research and still valid, then I realized that there's so much out there that we don't know. And so much that out there that we haven't even started exploring, let alone prove it. We haven't even started asking the right questions. So if someone claims something nowadays, my go-to reaction is not to dismiss them, but rather ask questions and be curious. So that sort of scientific approach I started taking towards spirituality. And I realized even today, with the questions we have asked, with the knowledge that we currently have, we can already prove that our thoughts lead to our reality. And that science and just exploration of that science has been really fascinating for me. So let's do a small exercise, I guess. How many thoughts do you think each of us has in a day? And how many of those thoughts do we think are original or rather helpful? Does anybody have any guesses? 10,000? Yeah. Okay. So 70,000. Yes. I think that's more close to the number. So we'll go with that. 60 to 70,000. Yes, I agree. 50 to 70. Yes. So we do have a lot more thoughts than we think. So it's closer to the 50 to 70,000 range, depending on who you are and how much, what kind of a day you're having. And out of these 60 to 70,000 thoughts that we know we have, more than 80% are repetitive thoughts that maybe you're thinking of the same thing again and again. Maybe if you're doing your routines, like brushing your teeth, waking up, folding your bed sheets, all of those things that are routine tasks require you to have routine thoughts, which is fine. But out of these routine thoughts as well, a majority of us usually tend to have negative thoughts throughout the day. So, what are negative thoughts? So, negative thoughts are things that get our energy low, some things that we have a negative narrative within ourselves. So this can be things like, oh, I cannot achieve this. I cannot do this. I can't, this is impossible. Something bad's going to happen to me. So any thought that stems out of fear, any thought that stems out of lower energy emotion is considered generally negative. So uh, this one small concept, I won't bore you with the concept, but this small concept really helped me understand my thoughts a lot better. And it's called the four types of thoughts. It's a very straightforward concept where there are four different types of thoughts. One is miraculous, positive, negative, and disastrous. So, miraculous thoughts obviously are you reaching for the moon and actually believing that it's going to happen. So miraculous thoughts in a day-to-day life might be that, okay, I'm having my driving license test today. So I'm going to ace this, and this is going to be my only attempt, and I'm going to get a perfect score. And that's miraculous thought, aiming for a perfect score and actually believing that you are capable and you're worthy of that perfect score. That's a miraculous thought. Whereas a positive thought would be something like, okay, I have the test. I think I'm confident. I think it's going to go. I think it's fine. I'll manage. I'll be okay. So that sort of self narrative that we have in our head, that's a positive thought where we agree that a positive outcome is going to arise from whatever we are doing. Whereas a negative thought is us in that unsure phase. And most of us, even me to this day, tend to be in this negative phase sometimes. Um, Actually, it's more than sometimes than I would like to admit, but it's the stage where we say, okay, I think it's going to go well, but there's always that but that pulls us back. So it's us taking one step forward and two steps back all constantly. Okay, it's going to go well, but I don't know this aspect of this. I'm really bad at parallel parking. I hope he doesn't ask me that from this test today. I hope this doesn't happen. I hope that doesn't happen because I am really not good at something. So that sort of narrative where you're sort of confident that the outcome is going to be positive, but you have a lot of self-doubt and questions and all of these alternative um, scenarios playing in your head that's causing you to think negatively. And a disastrous thought is, like the name suggests, it's going to be a disaster. I'm going to crash. I probably won't even make it out of the parking lot before I get rejected from my test. That's sort of the negative, like disastrous thinking. And so this type of breakdown in your thinking and tracking your thoughts has really helped me because as soon as I have a negative thought pop up into my head, I just label it and then I say, okay, that's a negative thought that I'm having. All I have to do is rewrite the script. Just change the wordings a little bit and then tell myself that this is going to be my new reality or this is going to be what I am going to believe in. It feels a little fake. I admit that initially, uh, when you have so many fears in your heart and you're telling yourself, no, 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 this is going to go well, this is going to go amazing, actually. When you know you haven't put in the effort or when you know there is a skill gap that you have. So it's going to feel fake. And that's something that I've struggled with as well. But the beauty of this exercise is that one, as you develop this narrative in your head that you're invincible or everything positive happens to you, slowly your actions reflect the same thing. So this is the thought and behavior cycle. This is the thought and behavior pattern that happens at a very biological level. So as we think, so we behave. And so I don't know if a lot of you are from a science background, so I'm going to use very layman words to explain this. So, in our brains, we have neurons, and every time we think of something, that specific neural channel. So, there's multiple neurons that form a particular channel. And every time we think of something, that channel gets activated. So, for example, if I'm constantly thinking of my driving test, then that channel that's dedicated in a way to that driving exam that I have is going to be active. Even when we are not consciously thinking of it, it's active in the background. And every time I feed it something negative, that channel gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And suddenly, if I come up with a positive thought saying, okay, no, this is going to be a miraculous experience for me, nothing wrong can actually go wrong, then it feels, then I'm sending a different input into the same channel. But because the channel's gotten so used to something negative, a particular thing, it's wired in such a way that it only responds very strongly to a negative thing. So that's why even when we tell ourselves something positive, it it hasn't configured yet. Like it hasn't changed the wiring of the network yet. So the channel hasn't adapted to something positive. So what happens when we are constantly having this practice, even though it feels superficial, it hasn't really stuck in our heads that we are a positive person or we are an amazing driver. That identity has still hasn't formed yet, but because of this continuous practice, that continuous narrative that you have in your head, the new channel gets formed and the older channel gets weaker and weaker as as the day goes by. So the new identity of you being an amazing driver, of you acing every exam that you have, whatever is the new identity that you want to create for yourself, the more you repeat it within your head, within your mind, the stronger that neural network gets. And as a result, everything that's conducive to that network becoming stronger gets attracted into your life. So, for example, if I have this narrative that everything positive happens, then I automatically attract positive things into my life. And how does that happen? So uh, there is this, what do I say? There's this theory that when you are uh, when you have that lucky girl syndrome, it's like a Gen Z term for this theory. It's called the lucky girl syndrome, when you feel in your heart and you strongly believe that you are a lucky person and nothing can go wrong. Then research has actually shown that in their life, they did an experiment where they told a group of people that they had this recording playing in their meditation, that okay, you're lucky, everything positive is going to happen, and all of that. And there's had a neutral group where they didn't listen to anything positive or negative. They were just listening to some random documentary that didn't cause any positive emotion or negative emotion in them. Whereas the third group listened to an audio where the narrative was much weaker. They were telling them, the audio was telling them about the things that they're scared about, some things that might go wrong. It's possibility, but it's not in their lived reality. And they scanned the brains of all three groups, and they saw that there's a structural difference in like how confident they were feeling. So just listening to negative narrative made them feel less confident. And when they had to perform a task after this audio listening, like audio task is done, so all three of them, all three groups listened to this audio, respective audio, and then all three were given the same task. And the group that listened to the positive audio did much, much better than the group that did listen to the negative or neutral audio. So compared to even the neutral audio, those who believed, or like those who were telling themselves that something positive will happen, those who were listening to the positive emotional cues performed better. So it's as simple as that. The more positive you feel, the more confident you feel, and everything happens pretty automatically in our brains. Um, it's almost like the movie Inside Out. I don't know if a lot of you have watched it. So if you haven't, I would recommend. It's animated, so might not be everyone's cup of tea, but it's a great movie, and it shows you how each of your emotions plays in your head, and how each of your emotions causes you to behave differently. So if you are filled with anger, and anger has the control center in your head, then your behavior will be in accordance to that. But if you're filled with love, if you're filled with happiness, and if your happiness has the control center in your head, regardless of what the scenario might be, your reaction will be some in tune with that emotion that you're feeling. So that's what a lot of the spiritual books say as well. Like any of the books that you read, they always talk about treating your mind as a soil, and whatever seeds you sow will lead to the trees that grow in your head. And which is pretty similar to what neuroscience says about how our neural networks are formed and how we store memories. Every time we have an experience, we automatically label that experience as something positive, good, bad, or we give it a label. So every time, say, for example, a neutral activity as eating food, if if we associate eating a particular food, for example, pizza, if I associate eating pizza with friendship, happiness, love, celebration, a party, then every time I think of a pizza, I automatically feel good. I automatically remember all my friends and all the good times I've had. But imagine a same stimuli, pizza remains the same, but someone who's had a pizza and they had a terrible experience of it. Maybe they were lactose intolerant and they got food poisoning or something along those lines. Then they associate pizza with all things negative, like, okay, that's going to make me sick and that's going to, put me in the hospital or something like that. So when they hear the word pizza, they will have a completely different reaction within themselves. So the two things that help in our day-to-day life, and why this whole science or this whole concept is important, is that one, we become more aware of the labels we are giving to different experiences, and two, every time that word pizza comes up, how am I reacting? And is that reaction valid to this scenario is something that we can become more mindful of. So what I have done in my practice, because I don't think spirituality or meditation or anything that we do in life is just about theory. It's about how you actually implement it. And it doesn't matter how many hours you meditate, as if you're not being mindful in your day-to-day life, it's not going to lead to much. So what I have started doing is having a thought journal. It's a very it's a practice that a lot of psychologists do. So write down all the positive things that has happened in the day, and write down all the, like, reflect on the negatives or so-called negatives during the day that I have, and rewrite those negatives into a more positive scenario. It's like finding the silver lining. Sometimes it's existing, sometimes it's not, but it's the effort or it's the thought of, okay, what lessons can I learn from this? What surely that was not a pleasant experience, but what might be something that I can take away from this experience? And that sort of asking, questioning, that introspection truly helped me in managing a lot of my stress. Um, yeah, so that's something I wanted to share today. We have, I think, 7 minutes. So if anyone has any questions or if any concept was not very clear so far, I can go over that. If not, I want to share a uh, small concept again, like a new one. Um, so this one's about how your emotions play a role into this thought process. So, like we discussed, thoughts are definitely powerful, but without adding emotion to the thoughts to back it up, our brain doesn't learn as fast. So thoughts definitely come from, like, in our head, thoughts come from the front part of the brain, like, more or less. Just to make it easier, we'll divide our brain into front, mid, and back. And the front part of the brain is where our decision making happens, where our thoughts happen, where our conscious deliberate thinking happens. And our emotions come from a place called the hippocampus. So every time we feel an emotion very strongly, our brain remembers that event so much better. So, for example, if you've gone skydiving, then your hippocampus is filled with so many, such a strong impulse in your hippocampus that you start thinking of, okay, this is exciting, this is amazing. That's like the adrenaline rush and all of that. You start labeling it as excitement and fun and adventure. Whereas the same reaction that's happening at a car accident, your body still reacts the same way and your body still produces the same chemicals in your brain, but you're labeling it a different emotion. You're labeling it as anxiety, stress, and harm, fear. So, uh, so our brains automatically have a reaction that we call as emotions to the thoughts that we have, and they both are interrelated. So every time you have an experience, if you label that biological system that you have within you into a positive thing, then it becomes a positive experience. But if you label that biological uh, arousal into a negative thing, then it becomes a negative experience. I took a very polarized example where definitely car accident is bad and skydiving for most people hopefully is good. Uh, but if we take small scenarios like coffee spilling on the table, or maybe small things like, oh, your mail didn't, like, you didn't send your mail on time, or you didn't get your Amazon order on time. These are all small events that we have in our day-to-day life that our brain automatically polarizes into either good or bad. But if we become more aware of that, maybe coffee spilling is not the worst thing that could have happened. It's okay. If we can just change the label that we have given that experience, then our emotions changes and it becomes a lot more manageable for us. I think, yeah, that's something I've practiced uh, that has given me a lot of sense of calm and relaxation throughout the day.